Welcome to Coffee with Kupke, a production of St. Paul Inside the Walls. Here on Coffee with Kupke, we grab a cup of coffee, at least we're claiming this is coffee. We sit with Monsignor Raymond Kupke, the pastor of St. Anthony's in Hawthorne, professor at Immaculate Conception Seminary, diocesan archivist. We sit with Monsignor Kupke to delve into the history of Catholicism in the Diocese of Paterson. My name is Father Paul Manning. I am the vicar for Evangelization for the Diocese of Paterson. And here I am with Monsignor Kupke. So grab your cup of coffee and let's jump right in. I'm going to take a sip. So, friends, viewers, listeners, you won't be able to see this, but some of you will note that the tome of Living Stones is closed on the table in front of us because we are doing our second episode of Weird Diocese of New Jersey. And I have no idea about what Monsignor Kupke is going to talk about what he's going to talk. So, it's going to be free fall. So I'm leaving it up to you.
Well, this, of course, is your idea.
That's true.
You come up with this weird Catholic Diocese of Paterson. So, but since you introduced it, I keep thinking of more and more things more and more weirdities that we have. So,
yeah.
But I thought I would start.
And we only got to 3 last time, so.
Well, I thought I would start by throwing one at you and testing you a little bit.
Oh, boy. Maybe Joe can help me if I'm stuck. Joe, be ready to search on your phone.
Well, you were pastor of St. Philip the Apostle in Clifton.
That is true.
So I was wondering if you understood all the weirdities of St. Philip's. In particular, the one oddity that St. Philip's shares alone with Holy Trinity Parish in Passaic.
Well, I know there was a fire. I know there's a secret tunnel that goes from the church to the school. I'm stabbing here.
Yes, you are.
And that's neither of those.
Yeah.
Okay. You got me stumped.
St. Philip's and Holy Trinity share the distinction of being the only parishes in the diocese that have their own liquor license.
I should have known that, right? Because
you should have. But
yeah, wow. So if I have the story right, the first pastor was concerned about where his folks were hanging out, and so he built a bowling alley, a fully functional bowling alley with automatic pin changers, and also got a liquor license to serve at the bowling alley.
Right.
Wow. And Holy Trinity has the same situation?
Holy Trinity, as I understand it, as one of the last, I don't know that they use it because it's a different ethnic
need now. Yeah.
But if you can imagine a German, Austrian, Hungarian parish, they have an outdoor beer garden license.
Wow.
Kind of like an Oktoberfest license.
Well, when I was at St. Philip's, they still had bowling leagues.
Right.
And yes, and the bar was fully functioning at that point. I think
I was there as well.
I think it stopped under my successor, one of my successors. So
that was my
that's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many parishes in New Jersey have a liquor license?
Yeah. I wonder if they could probably sell that for big bucks.
Possibly.
Maybe it's good to hold on to it. Yeah.
But I thought, our friend, Monsignor John Hart,
yes,
is fond of referring to our bishops by number. So Saratelli's number 7 and Bernardo's number 6. So I thought we might talk today about the oddness of having a bishop 4.5.
Okay, that's weird.
So between Bishop Nava and Bishop Casey, there's another man who never gets mentioned, never gets any credit, but was briefly, for a couple of weeks, the Bishop of Paterson.
Wow. So I think you may have mentioned this in an episode, but I can't remember this at all. Joe, do you remember this? Did we talk about this? No? You're not thinking so.
So I thought the oddity of Bishop 4.5 would be enough to cover this episode.
Wow.
So Bishop Casey, Bishop Nava, Bishop James Nava, number 4, dies of a heart attack in Rome at the Second Vatican Council.
Yeah.
So this is in October of 65.
Oh, and incidentally, didn't Monsignor Flanagan mention to us that he has his last letter? Were you there?
Yes.
Yeah, he's got he claims the last thing that Nava wrote before he died,
right?
Which needs to go into the archives.
Right.
It was some note to Monsignor Flanagan.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to see the proof of it.
a few months expire, while they go through the process. And
Was Nava's death unexpected?
for those in the know,
He was having heart issues.
there were obviously things about him. For example, he had one of the porches at the house in Durham Avenue winterized so that he wouldn't have to go on the second floor at all. He wouldn't have to climb the steps.
Oh, okay.
There were little accommodations.
Yeah. Is that porch still there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, it's off of
The
Bishop Sweeney's office.
okay. Yeah.
He also had a aluminum crozier fabricated lighter.
Yeah. Interesting.
So there were if you knew, there were little hints that he was not.
Now he was bishop from.
We can't go into Nava.
Okay.
We're going to get completely sidetracked here.
Yeah.
That's episode way up in the future.
Yeah. But I mean, you met him.
Oh yeah.
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 Were you in the know at that time that he was?
No.
Okay. So it's the last time that Monsignor Kupke was not in the know. Okay.
So there is an auxiliary bishop in Brooklyn.
We had another bishop from Brooklyn?
We had another bishop from Brooklyn.
Wow.
This is John J. Boardman.
John J.
Boardman.
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 He was pastor of a large parish in Brooklyn, Our Lady of the Angels. So he gets called up by the apostolic delegate at the time.
Would that have been Jadot?
No, this
Before
would be
that.
Vagnozzi.
Off the top of his head, folks.
He offers him Paterson.
And Boardman says, where?
No, just the opposite.
He says, goody?
Boardman had a sister
Oh.
who had a summer home in Culver's Lake up in Sussex County.
Very nice.
He had spent many, many weekends in the Paterson Diocese. He knew a number of the priests from like clergy, barbecues in the summer. He was absolutely delighted.
Oh, man, I'm already feeling sorry for this guy.
By the way, let me say that while this story sounds like clerical gossip, I have this from Boardman's own mouth because I was at one of these barbecues, and after a drink, he was happy to tell the whole story.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. What was his first name?
John.
John Boardman.
So the delegate offers, the Holy Father has in mind to name you Bishop of Paterson. Boardman did not say, I need to pray about it. None of that. Just as I accept. He was happy as could be.
Now, may I ask a question here? When does one actually officially become the bishop of a diocese? Is it when you say yes or when you are?
Installed.
Okay. So he's
the bishop-elect
Yes.
of Paterson. Nobody knows this yet because it hasn't been announced, but other things are afoot. And apparently, Francis Cardinal Spellman, who is still the Archbishop of New York, has as one of his auxiliaries Fulton Sheen.
Bishop Fulton Sheen.
right? The brilliant
Orator,
orator,
TV personality. Yes.
almost beatified.
Yes, that's right.
And Sheen, at this point, was also the national director of the Society for the Propagation of the Faith. So he has a national reputation,
And he
apparently Manhattan was not big enough for two outsized personalities.
who need to raise big funds to keep the operation going.
Right, and in addition to that, Spellman apparently is tired of New York money going into the propagation of the faith. Not that he doesn't believe in the missions,
right,
but
right.
he also has projects in the New York Archdiocese,
right.
and too often he's getting there and finding that Sheen has already tapped them.
Yeah, the heavy hitters are connected with Bishop Sheen.
Yeah, so Spellman has had enough of this, and he wants Sheen out of New York. So he's looking around to see where he can promote him. This would be theoretically a promotion, given your own see.
Yes, from auxiliary to an ordinary.
Right, but somewhere far away from New York,
Okay,
where all the action
so Paterson was not the
we
place.
were too close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even then, you could get from Paterson to New York in half an hour. So his gaze falls on Rochester, New York. Rochester has a certain cachet because its previous bishop had become a cardinal. The first Cardinal Archbishop of Detroit, Cardinal Mooney, had been Bishop of Rochester. So Rochester has a little thing going for it.
Yeah.
And it has a very old bishop. There is no retirement age at this point for bishops. So
How old is very old?
in his 80s.
Okay. And his name?
James Carney.
Kearney. Like the city of Kearney?
Yes, similar.
Yeah.
So Bishop Carney is elderly, and if you know the Rochester Diocese, the see city is off in the corner. It's far away from most of the diocese. But he's able to keep this going because he has a much younger auxiliary bishop named Lawrence Casey.
Okay, now it's coming together.
And Casey is doing all the grunt work. He's the one running around the diocese doing all the confirmations and doing all the road trips to Elmira and Corning and Steuben and all those places.
Wow. Elmira. That was good to pull that out.
So Spellman reasons that if he can move Casey out, Carney will have no choice but to retire. They're not going to give him another auxiliary bishop at 83 or 84, whatever he was.
And so the see will be open.
And if he can get him out, then he can maneuver.
Now, would Rochester be a suffragan see?
Rochester's a suffragan see of New York.
Yeah.
Spellman is on the Congregation of Bishops.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering how we could maneuver this so easily. But
So
it happens.
Poor Bishop Boardman.
Oh, yeah. So I forgot about him and all this
Who,
intrigue.
in his mind, is not in his mind. He's already packing
Yeah.
to move because he is
The new-
Bishop-elect of
Yes.
Paterson, sub rosa, not announced yet. So the delegate calls him up and says,
I don't know how to tell you
in
this.
wonderful Vaticanese, Excellency, I do not know how to tell you this, but something else has developed in the Holy Father, and certainly you will be considered for the next suitable opening, but we have to take Paterson off the table. It's not going to be you.
Wow.
According to Boardman has some choice words for the delegate about, future openings. But anyway.
Oh, my. Now, this isn't in the book, is it?
No, we can't put everything in the book.
Is it a footnote? Not even a footnote. We're hearing this for the first time.
So in March of 66, then, Lawrence Casey, much to his shock, is made the Bishop of Paterson.
Yes.
He really expected. Casey had lived his entire life in the city of Rochester. Even Rochester's major seminary was in the city of Rochester. He had never been out of the city of Rochester.
And now,
All his assignments,
right?
you can see the look on his face as they're waving goodbye to him. It's a guy who's kind of like,
What do you mean? You have photos of that?
we have photos of him leaving Rochester. Yes,
Oh.
and he has, he's on the gangplank of the plane waving goodbye
Oh,
to
man.
Carney, and he has this look on his face like, what, why did I ever promise obedience and respect to these people?
And so Boardman.
But Casey made it work.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah, and-
we'll talk about him for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. The fact that he's buried here,
Yes.
not in Rochester,
Right.
says something about how much he made it work. But as soon as he's gone, Carney is left with a mess. So in October then, 6 months later, on the same day, he retires and Fulton Sheen is named
Bishop
the
of
Ordinary
Rochester.
Rochester.
Yeah. And that did not work out so well, did it?
It did not. He was only there 3 years.
Okay.
Sheen had never had a pastoral assignment
Yeah.
in his life. He was totally ill-prepared to be a diocesan ordinary,
Yeah.
much less, of a semi-rural upstate diocese.
Right.
This was not it. This was not the set of skills that were in his wheelhouse,
Right.
so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Hard to get to a TV
Yeah,
studio from
yeah,
there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And it also, has proved the undoing of his beatification. But so he only lasts 3 years. But Casey comes down, and it took him a little while to adjust, but
He did well.
he ultimately did well.
Now, so Boardman.
Boardman dies a couple of years later. He retires in 1977 as auxiliary bishop after 25 years as auxiliary bishop of Brooklyn. Dies the next year.
Wow. And you heard this story from him.
We were sitting at a priest's barbecue in Queen of Peace in Branchville,
Okay.
and
And you heard this story.
Monsignor Joe Good and I.
Yes.
And before I came today, I checked with Joe Good. I said, I do have this correct, right? And he's absolutely.
That's amazing. So,
The interesting thing is that, it's not really an interesting thing, but it's one of those little throwaway extra details you can bring up at cocktail parties.
yeah, number 4.5.
Boardman's titular see, after he dies, it eventually goes to Christophe Pierre.
Oh, wow. The
Yeah.
current
Apostolic
nuncio.
nuncio,
Yeah.
right.
Interesting. Joe, how are we doing time-wise? I didn't hit the clock.
18 minutes.
Oh, okay. So we have time for one more weird Diocese of Paterson.
I didn't prepare anymore.
You got a list there.
No, that's not.
What about, anything about this building? About the fire and...
No, but I can give you a weirdity about this building and Vera Lane.
Okay. That's coming out of the attic.
It is.
Who is Vera Mullane?
Vera Lane is a young woman that is hired on the day the chancery opens in 1938 to serve as secretary for the first Bishop of Paterson. She was a graduate of St. Joseph's High School in Paterson, their secretarial program. She was recommended by the nun that was in charge of the program. So it was a lifetime commitment. She was served as bishop secretary for 50 years.
Wow. She was 20 when she started.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And
The current secretary, we've been a diocese now for, 85 years, some going on 90. The current secretary is only the fourth one
yeah.
because Vera was in place for 50 years.
Wow.
Basically, in archival work, you never ever change the organization of a collection when you get it. It's one of the principles of archiving, because however the formator of the collection created it, says something about them and the use of the collection. So in our diocesan archives, Vera Mullane is basically the originator,
Oh,
because the filing system of the diocese originates with her.
in her head.
So what she thought something was, it remains right down to the present day.
It's funny because I often think this when I'm looking in my computer files or have to ask somebody else to look for it, and you're trying to remember,
What I thought it was.
yeah, and why put it in which file. And the way we do this is very differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, for example, if you got a collection of business files, most of which were in Morris County, you would not reorganize it into 21 different counties, because the fact that there's a bulge in Morris County tells you something about the business
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
So anyway, when Bishop Serratelli, also known as number 7, decides to make this building a diocesan evangelization center, there is a strong reaction from the alumni of Bailey Ellard High School.
There certainly is. Yeah.
And
So a small number were very opposed. Yeah.
and they were willing to take it to court,
Which they did.
claiming that the original donation required this to be used as a school.
Right. By
And
two
if it-
sisters who gave the money.
Right.
Right.
And if it was used for anything else, then it would revert to the estate of the sisters. So the diocesan attorney this was one of our earliest workings together.
Yes.
He says, "Where is this letter?" So I had to go into the archives and try and find the letter, creating the money or donating the money that went into Bailey Ellard.
So this would have been 1948-ish.
A
Yeah.
little bit earlier, actually.
And you're channeling Vera Mullane at this point.
And that's basically what's happening. I'm standing in the archives and saying, what would Vera have called this? Because I had already looked under Assumption, Morristown, St. Vincent's, Madison, Catholic high schools. I had looked under every logical thing I could think of
Right.
that this would be.
Right. Where it would be.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't there. So I just stood there and said, I'm going to have to go through this entire archive, file by file, looking for this.
And just give me an idea, how big is this?
It's a room full,
Wow.
So fortunately, in Vera's mind, this was a bequest.
Yes.
And B is early in the alphabet.
Oh, so you had started?
I had started,
Oh, man.
and
Wow.
maybe about the 14th file in,
Bequest.
there it was, bequests, and there was the letter, and that solved the whole case.
And the letter said,
It was enough leeway that they could not press their case, because the sisters did not give the building. They gave money, all of which was used to purchase the building, but it did not cover the whole purchase.
okay.
So
Yeah, the diocese
it didn't
was
have
part
the
owner.
It
Yeah.
did not have the
The heft.
strength that
Yeah.
they had hoped for.
Yeah.
But you basically had to say, what would Vera call this? Will, testament,
Bequest.
bequest was the answer.
So, in fact, the resolution of the Bailey case mandated that we host on the second Saturday of every October Bailey Ellard Day, which we have faithfully observed, and we don't schedule anything else on that day but open up the buildings for Bailey
alumni.
Ellard alumni. And often the major classes, 50, 40, 25, will come and celebrate Mass here and take a tour of the whole place.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to finish with this. So Joe knows some of the history here. Number one, that there was a fire that destroyed the original building in 1912, I think, and this second building was built in 1920. And there is the urban legend that there is a ghost in the house who I have never met and whose name allegedly was Alice. Do you know this story?
This was the child of the family that
Allegedly died in the fire. Well, in fact, there's no historical evidence that anybody died in the fire.
I think this sounds like the story of a number of mansions in the area.
Yeah, so
Seems to me Darlington had one of these.
Yeah, we have never found historical evidence of that.
Their child died in the reflecting pool, not in the fire. But
Yeah, but one detail that I'll end with is there's a Walker connection. This house is connected to a Walker family, and we were told that it was the Johnny Walker family of Johnny Walker
my.
Black. Well, we did some research, and the owners of this mansion married and divorced, and I think the wife married multiple times, and one of the men she married was Walker, great uncle of George Herbert Walker Bush. So it's the Bush Walkers and not the Scotch family. Yeah.
you've got the political Walkers, not the.
Interesting. So we're going to end on that weird note, which is appropriate. And next time we get together, we're going to take up the story of living stones and the foundation of the Diocese of Paterson. Let's leave it there. I want all of you who are listening or watching to make sure that you keep an eye out or an ear out for the next episode of Coffee with Kupke. In order to stay on top of new releases, make sure you follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you are on YouTube, please do drop a like and hit the bell for notifications. While you're at it, make sure to check out the other shows produced by the diocese. Those shows are Beyond the Beacon, hosted by Bishop Kevin Sweeney and Jay Agnish, our Director of Communications, and the Paul Street Journal, hosted by Brian Hansberger and Freddie Garcia. I want to give a special thanks to Joe Ginexi, our sound and visual engineer, Caitlin Ferrari, who's involved in pre- and post-production, and Freddie Garcia, who's helping out with this podcast in addition to doing his own. With all that said, I just want to thank you for joining us in Coffee with Kupke. Keep making Catholic history in the Diocese of Paterson.